Welcome to Screen It or Stream It,
where we take a look at a movie that's in theaters now
versus one you can stream at home,
and we try to decide which one should you go with.
This week, we went to see a highly lauded movie, Dunkirk. Now, Dunkirk is based on a true story, and if you saw the trailers, you probably got the gist of the entire story. The British and the French armies were basically trapped on a beach in Dunkirk, surrounded by the Germans, ocean to their back and nowhere to go. They're on the English Channel, so they're really close to home. Well, I guess the British are really close to home.
The French were home.
They were really close to being able to get away from the German armies, but they couldn't do it because you've got this, body of water. And they couldn't get these big ships in there to haul them off. So they have to call on the fishing boats and just the kind of general public in Britain is if you have a boat, go help them. Mm-hmm. And the general public got in their boats, sailed across the channel to try to come and bring the guys back home. And that's really the entire synopsis of the movie as far as I go there. It does delve deeper. It kind of focuses on some characters and we get a little bit of their stories, but that's easily the overreaching arc of everything. So this movie has been heralded. People have talked about this thing. Mm-hmm. Like, it is absolutely fantastic. Both of us were super excited to go see it.
Cannot even tell you.
Oh, so excited to see it.
How excited.
Love me a war movie, especially one done well. So what are we going to rate it?
Well, there was actually a lot less dissension on this than I would have hoped for how much we wanted to see it, but we averaged out at giving it 2 stars.
Yes.
So, Dunkirk, Christopher Nolan, of all people, who's done a lot of great stuff, great canon of work. We were all super excited, and yet only 2 stars. What happened?
Well, Christopher Nolan, love him as a director.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Hardy is one of my favorite actors.
I love Tom Hardy.
Love Tom Hardy.
He's great.
A war movie that was visually stunning. This thing is beautiful.
Beautifully shot, all of the effects. I didn't even think they were effects. I mean, I know they are, but I didn't think it at the time because they were just seamless. Beautiful.
The ships, the airplanes, the costumes, the weapons, the beach, the everything. So well thought out and so well done. And it was beautiful.
And the acting, every single bit of it. I cannot point to a single bit of acting that I thought was subpar. It was all top-notch, great. Just they all brought their... I didn't even know half the actors. They all brought top-notch performances, yes. Every single one.
And Tom Hardy had his face hidden for most of his fighter pilot with a mask on. And
dang it, Bane.
He does end up with a mask on a lot, doesn't he? Max Bane.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
So it had to fall down somewhere. And I thought it was just me. And when we walked out, I was waiting, because we have a group that goes and sees these movies, and I was waiting for everybody's positive reviews. And I wanted them to tell me what I was missing. And we all walked out of it with kind of a
finishing each other's sentences, saying the exact same thing that we just... And again, even the camera work. All the camera work was beautiful. I mean...
If this is a movie you want to see, I think it's one, even though we gave it 2 stars, go to the theater and see it because it's so beautiful.
It is.
It's, it's so well shot and done. It would be better on a big screen. If you got an IMAX, go find an IMAX and do that. Where it fell down for me was I had 3 things.
Oh, I've only got the one.
You only got the one? All right, you tell them your one, I'll add in my others.
The editing.
The editing was definitely one of mine.
Now, not that it was edited badly. I mean, shot for shot as it was constructed, beautiful, top notch. But, and it's not really a spoiler, it's not a plot spoiler, certainly. The thing, it was told in a very non-linear fashion, which, disclaimer, I'm not a fan of non-linear stories.
I am.
In general, I do like Pulp Fiction, and there are several others I could point to if I really got to thinking about it. In fact, several Tarantinos come to mind that were
likes that.
And I like those. But I guess especially for a history piece, it just, to me, doesn't feel like it fits. Now,
so let's define it a little bit better. Because what happened is the movie would be going along and something would happen.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say a boat gets sunk. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler. There's a lot of boats and war going on. A boat gets sunk.
There were over 200 boats sunk in the actual battle. More on that later.
I don't know how many boats were sunk. It might have been 2. It might have been 20. Because what they did with the editing...
3 at least.
You would see the boat sink, and maybe it was shot from the perspective of on the boat. Mm-hmm. Well, then it would jump back in time 3 minutes and show you the exact same scene again from a different perspective. So maybe this time from an airplane above.
Right.
Then it jumps back 3 minutes again, and it shows you it all again. Maybe this time from another ship on the water.
And they didn't announce at all, especially early on, that this was the way they were doing things. At first, the movie looks like it's just a straight story going on, and it wasn't until probably a third of the way through when I realized what was happening, because suddenly it was night and then it was day again. I'm like, wait a minute, they're up to something.
So it did create some confusion, and it made it hard to follow the story at some point in time.
And if that was intentional, if they wanted it to be like you're having a memory, because, you know, when you remember something, it kind of gets jumbled in your mind. If that's what they were going for, they nailed that, but I didn't like it.
Now, you said you usually don't like that. I usually like that. But when we loop back in time, there has to be a reason that it looped back in time. To show it from someone else's perspective. And I don't mean we put the camera in a different place. I mean to get a different version of the story, a different view on the story.
One fun example is Vantage Point.
Yes. Or to give you...
Because there was always new information from every different vantage point they gave you in that movie.
Yeah, if you don't know something and as you go back,
you're
puts
learning
the pieces
more things.
together, that's great.
But in this case...
Well, then it did it a lot in the movie.
No, it was just one time.
There was one time you learned something different.
Learned something new. And
it was just like watching an instant replay in a sports game, like a football game. Mm-hmm. But you weren't gaining anything from it. We didn't get a better angle. We didn't get a better view. We just got the same thing again. And this is a 2-hour movie. If you took out, I mean, it might have been an hour. It was
107 minutes.
Yeah.
It was less than 2 hours.
It felt like 2 hours.
It did.
So that was one. The nonlinear storytelling was not done well. And I like it when it's done well. So...
Okay, what's your number 2 thing?
So my number 2 thing was that the style. Like, we never see a German face throughout the entire thing.
Which was interesting. I didn't really think about it till the till the end of the movie. Like, oh, we didn't.
There's very little dialogue in the movie at all.
Right, and that can go either way.
It's pretty much just ambient noises. There's gunshots and explosions. And now there's dialogue, there's character
they
development.
talk. It's just...
But it's much, much less than what you would normally get in a, feature film.
The talking wasn't driving the narrative. It was more the visuals, which is hard to do well.
And granted, so if it's the style that they were going for, they were trying to tell a story and he was trying to tell it in a neat way, and if you liked it, it was probably a good thing. I just didn't. It didn't work for me. The no speaking, there was speaking.
Light speech.
The light speech, the wide camera shots where we got these big sweeping, views of everything.
Does look nice in the theater.
You add that back to the, we're looping back in time, and it just made everything drag. And it made it, like I said, it made it seem longer than it was, and it felt like you were watching a documentary on the History Channel rather than a movie. Which brings me to my third point, and that's the story. Mm-hmm. Now, in real life, this is an amazing story.
Yes.
Civilians coming to the rescue of 400,000, 300-something thousand.
400,000 men trapped on the beach.
Trapped on the beach, and hey, go get your fishing boat and go pick these guys up with the Germans bombing and shooting. That's a great story. But the plot, that's it. That's the plot of the movie. And they could have told it in 5 minutes and been more effective in the hour and whatever. It's literally, we sailed over, get on a boat, we go back. Yay! They don't do anything to make it personal. They're the characters.
Which is crazy because you're following, is it 3-4 different guys' points of view, kind of?
Yeah, and for the most part, you don't care about them. I wasn't worried. I'm like, well, if he dies, he dies. There was no tension. There was tension.
There was tension.
There wasn't tension from the character. Like, I don't know. by the point the movie starts, and we had talked about this too, it basically picks up as they're beaten and they're downtrodden and they're on the beach and they need rescue.
Yeah, they're already trapped.
But if they would have started a couple of days before, as they were being forced back to the beach, there's no...
Well, that was another thing. We couldn't even tell how long they were supposedly trapped on the beach in the movie. It was really, really hard to tell. Was it days? Was it weeks? I couldn't tell.
But there was no character development. There was no heroics. I mean, towards the end, we had some heroics.
Yeah.
But
off
there was
camera.
Oh, God. Hey, a really cool thing happened over there.
Yep. I couldn't believe they did that.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
it was still kind of cool, but it could have been a lot more cool.
But there was nothing. Basically, the movie starts with them running away.
Yeah.
And they run away for the entire movie.
Yeah.
And it's just maybe it's the American in me. Maybe it's the
We want to see them do stuff.
maybe it's the Texan in me. But yeah, we stand up and fight. Somebody stand up and fight. And it's just, which I know they can't. I know they're being downtrodden. But what I'm saying is, from the standpoint of the movie, we didn't get to see them fight.
We want to see how they got to that point, I think.
We basically got to see the beaten version of the people, but we never got to see the fighting version of the people.
Right.
Getting to that beaten point.
Well, as I said, I looked up the history on this.
Okay. Here we go.
So I'm going to try and keep this as brief and interesting as possible. Good luck. Basically, the battle at Dunkirk, when the Germans came, they just tore through the French lines and basically within 2 weeks had overrun the entire country. The British sent their force, it was like 400,000 men or something. And
you didn't know Dunkirk is France.
Yeah, it's in France. It's a beach in France. The French had, I don't know how many 100,000 of their own men. They went to fight the Germans, got their butts kicked, and ended up retreating all the way back to Dunkirk, which I looked up also the area, 60 miles by 25 miles. The beach is huge. Now, in the movie, they never explained why the Germans didn't just roll in and kill them all. I don't know. They don't want to waste their tanks. But reading the history on it, turns out a lot of marshlands and soft sand. Tanks can't get in there. So that's probably why they retreated that way, because they knew it was a safer place to go.
They couldn't put that much exposition in the movie to explain that?
2 seconds. It would have taken 2 seconds to explain that.
Man.
So
I'm angrier than I was before now.
Right? The Germans had them surrounded and then halted their advance for 3 days. There's a lot of historical debate as to why. The general consensus seems to be that they didn't want to risk pushing their own lines too thin and risk the French and British pushing through and then flanking them and all that stuff. So basically, they just kept shoring up their lines for about 3 days, which gave the British and French a lot of time to dig in really strong lines.
Well, hold that thought right there, because I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
Well, that was a big complaint, too. Because we don't see the Germans, it's just a bunch of guys on a beach.
Sitting there, occasionally getting bombed by aircraft.
And there's no
they never showed the fighting line. Well, you said, I take it back. One time they showed one of the fighting positions, and that was it.
There's a historical reason for them to have done that. Mm-hmm. But just going into the movie and sitting down and watching it, there's no reason for them to be sitting on that beach.
Right. You don't understand it because they didn't give you that context.
Man, that makes me angry. And then they talk about, well, there's tanks and artillery, and we got 400,000 guys in a little group, and we're just going to let them sit there. Oh, man.
Well,
I didn't even know that.
So,
angry
now we're all surrounded. We know why we're surrounded. We know we're dug in good. So the Germans are actually having trouble getting in. So they decide the best thing to do, pick them off from the air, because they have a really good air force. The Luftwaffe was very deadly. Again, they only covered this a little in the movie. They were trapped on the beach from the 26th of May through like the 4th of June. So basically 11 days-ish. I may have missed up the numbers there, but it was about 11 days they were trying to evacuate. Of those 11 days, only 2.5 days were good weather for flying. So pretty much the planes were grounded for most of the operation anyway. Of course, then there were U-boats sinking ships and all that stuff, so that's why it was so hard to evacuate with the...
We never saw a U-boat either, did we?
No, they mentioned one once, and we saw a torpedo. Torpedo. So... there was all that going on, and the battle in the skies apparently was a pretty big deal because there were a couple hundred planes shot down on either side.
And there was
apparently the RA,
like 3 airplanes.
In the movie, there were 3 English planes seen, and there were like 4 German planes. That was it. But in actuality, about 100-ish to 200 English planes were shot down, and something on the order of 250 to 300 German planes were shot down. So it was quite a fight in the skies. But again, you wouldn't know that from the movie because you were just following the one plane. While we're on planes, sidebar, I really loved the visuals of the dogfights in the airplanes. I had to say that because most movies, and I think you commented on this yesterday, it's like they're just doing the fast action and zoom, zoom, like they're just zooming, and you'd think the thing's a jet fighter, which it's a Spitfire. It's way cool. But watching it, you really, from the cockpit camera and stuff, you really got the sense that plane had weight, and when he was pulling it, it was actually difficult to change course and do all that stuff. Like, you got a real sense that he's controlling that aircraft. The beautiful.
So, like, the acrobatics and the aerobatics were not... Anytime you watch a dogfight in a movie, it's like instantaneous. Like, they defy the laws of inertia. It's just like, and it's gone, you know. And in the movie, they would bake, and you could feel the pressure.
He's pulling.
And probably the most real, and I have no idea what a real one looks like, but to me, that was the most realistic dogfight I'd ever seen.
It felt real. It felt it. So, and anyway, in sidebar, we've got a little bit of time left. We're almost out. So, okay, dogfighting in the air. Anyway, the Germans finally did start pressing their attack, by which time all the English small ships showed up, ferrying all the troops back to the bigger ships and got them out. All in all, about 330,000 men got evacuated. Once the English were out, they sent their boats back to get the French. Churchill insisted. He'd been prime minister for like 3 weeks. We like Churchill. Anyway, so they came back and rescued as many of the French as possible. Now again, what they didn't cover in the movie, the French were left holding the line. They were the only reason the Germans did not punch through. 50,000 Frenchmen got captured holding the line so everyone else could escape.
Well, again, almost showed no Frenchmen in the movie
salute
at all.
the French. The true history of this it's such a rich story and so interesting and could have been so wonderful on screen. And that's why I was disappointed, I think. It just, to me, fell very flat.
Well, that makes it sound like it could have been even better than I was imagining it, and it was worse than I imagined.
It could have been amazing. So we're actually running really short on time. Real quick, what do you got for a stream it option if you don't want to
stream it option? Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction.
No, thematically not the same, but it does the timey-wimey stuff really good.
Non-linear, done right. Great movie. Definitely recommend Tarantino, so gobs of craziness happening.
Violence.
We like violence. So I'm going to go with The Thin Red Line, which I should say, disclaimer, I hated The Thin Red Line, like a lot. I actually liked Dunkirk, kinda, but I need to see it again to make sure. The Thin Red Line, also World War II, ton of A-list actors, Sean Penn and Jim Caviezel for 2, and there's George Clooney, I think's in it even. There's a whole bunch of guys in that one. 1998, but it's very non-linear and very like philosophical musings, and just not what I go to a war movie to get, like the history of it all. Who even knows what they were talking about in that movie? It was odd. But if you liked that one, you probably liked Dunkirk, so there is that. And that's definitely all the time we have. Thanks for watching Screen It or Stream It.
And remember, don't take your kids to the movies on Tuesday nights because that's when we go.
We made it!